Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here to be presenting to you today. This talk is going to be on varieties, ripeners and climate trends. I thought I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tabile, Marvelous, Rickett and Matthew for their data and for really providing their assistance with this presentation. I couldn't have done it without their assistance. With the theme of the symposium being on maximizing RV yields, I'm going to be concentrating on the performance of our varieties by highlighting the progress that SASIAA has made with breeding and variety selection. I'm then going to move on to showing you the positive responses that can be achieved by applying ripeners. We know that climate change is going to have an impact on our industry, and I will take you through the research that's been conducted to date and how important it is for us to investigate how we should be selecting varieties that will be adapted to the future climate. One way for growers to maximize their RV yields is by planting varieties that have high cane yields and improved tons of RV, together with better levels of resistance to local pests and diseases. Management practices might need to be adjusted for the different varieties due to their different characteristics. Ripeners can be applied to these new varieties to further improve the RV percent and to increase the tons RV. SASIAA has an internationally recognized and well-established breeding and selection program that is focused on producing superior varieties with high tons RV and improved pest and disease resistance compared to what is already commercially available to growers. Once these selected varieties have been approved for release, further testing is then done on these varieties in post-release variety evaluation trials. This is to determine their performance across a much wider range of agroclimatic conditions in order to advise growers on the most appropriate placement, disposition, and management of these varieties. I'm going to show you now the significant progress that has been made in the last 5 years at SASIAA by showing you some data. I will start by looking at the Midlands region. This table includes varieties released since 2015. The table shows results from the plant breeding trials as well as the post-release variety evaluation trials. I would like to point out here that plant breeding trials are conducted on the SASIAA research stations as well as on grower cooperative farms. Most of the post-release variety trials are conducted on grower cooperative farms. There are a number of varieties that were released prior to these 6 varieties that have currently been planted by growers, and reports are that these varieties are producing very high RV yields for growers. There have been significant improvements in the tons RV of these new varieties relative to the control varieties. In the post-release variety trials, the tons RV relative to N48 are significantly better for N61 and 62. I need to point out the difference between the post-release variety trials and plant breeding trials in that the control varieties used to make comparisons are different. What is very exciting about the 2 new varieties that are in the pipeline for bulking, the N74 and 75, is there's been a significant increase in RV percent for these varieties compared to other commercial varieties. There's also been an improvement in the Aldana resistance of these varieties in the Midlands. With Aldana becoming more and more of a problem in the Midlands region as the temperatures are increasing, Aldana resistance is becoming extremely important for very long cutting cycles. A further improvement of these varieties is the improvement in their smut resistance. This is much better than some of the more recently released varieties. I will show you some trial data from some post-release variety evaluation trials in the Midlands. This first graph shows a trial conducted in Harburg and shows the performance of the newer varieties relative to N48. Another trial was conducted in Eston and is on a sandy soil and shows varieties relative to N12. What can be seen from this trial is the performance of N50 is one of the newer varieties relative to N12. Significant progress has also been made in the coastal regions, where breeders are selecting for annual harvesting as well as for longer cutting cycles of around 15 to 18 months. Progress has been made on breeding varieties for improved tons RV, as well as improved resistance to smut and to aldana. N41 is a very popular variety on the coast. However, it is becoming susceptible to smut. These new varieties show quite a lot of promise for showing some resistance to smut going forward. Looking at the longer cutting cycle varieties, there's also significant improvements in terms of tons RV relative to the control varieties that are already available to the industry. On an annual cutting cycle, variety evaluation trials demonstrate an improved level of RV yield of the more recently released varieties compared to N41, and we know that N41 is an extremely popular variety amongst growers. Evaluation trials also show improved RV yields on a longer cutting cycle across the coastal region. This graph shows varieties relative to N39 in trials. For the irrigated regions, we can see that there's been some significant increases. It has been a while since SASIAA has been able to release a variety suitable for this region. The variety N60 was released in 2016 and showed incredible promise in terms of tons RV. Unfortunately, with the high smut levels being observed in varieties and in the commercial cane in the northern irrigated region, this variety was held back from the north and is only available to the southern irrigated regions due to its intermediate smut rating. What has been very exciting is that more recently we are releasing 3 late season varieties, and this is in response to requests from growers for late season varieties and very significant yield improvements from these 3 varieties. Just to look at N70, this is also a variety. If you look at the pest and disease ratings, it's actually one of the few varieties in the irrigated region that is resistant to smut, mosaic and aldana, as well as having improved RV content. So this is a very exciting variety for both the northern irrigated region as well as the southern irrigated regions. Looking at some variety evaluation trials in the irrigated region, this is just the one trial where it's showing the N60 relative to N36 under irrigated conditions, and then followed by N70. This variety is slightly lower in terms of tons RV compared to N71 and N73. However, it does have a very much improved pest and disease rating. Okay, I'd like to move on to ripeners now. Ripeners are used for improving low cane quality. That's usually caused by prolonged periods of vigorous growth that happens during summer. It's also used for maintaining late season quality after winter. The most important consideration when planning to spray ripeners for chemical ripening is the crop growth vigor and crop maturity at the time of spraying. For chemical ripening, spraying must take place when the cane is growing vigorously and the crop maturity is low. This is very important. Knowledge exchange is essential for promoting adoption. There are a number of information sheets available through SASIAA that can assist growers in applying ripeners correctly. There's also a smartphone app that is available, known as Purist, that growers can use to assist them. Regular grower days are conducted, and commercial demonstration trials are used to ensure the continuous exchange of cane quality management recommendations. It's very important to show the profitability of using new technology to growers. And I'm going to be showing you some of the profitability outcomes that have come from the demonstration trials. These results are from 10 participatory commercial on-farm demo trials that have been conducted over the past 2 years. And it's important to note here that I'm going to be showing you specifically for the dryland conditions, both Midlands and the South Coast. And this will include an economic analysis that factors in the RV yield income, commercial ripening costs, and regional harvesting and transport costs. There were 5 demonstration trials conducted in the Midlands region using different varieties and different harvest ages. The application of ripener to these plots show significant improvements in the gross margins for all plots. It's important here to note that the widespread belief over many years that longer cycle rain-fed crops do not give favorable economic responses to ripeners has been proven wrong by these participatory demo trials. These are the results from 5 demonstration trials on the south coast, showing the same trends that have been observed in the Midlands trials. You can have a look, significant improvements in tons RV per hectare in terms of gross margin. It is, however, important to note that due to the large between-season and within-season variations in the rainfall patterns, there are no fixed ripening recipes that are available for growers. Maturity-based decision-making, which involves using a refractometer and the use of the purist application, now enables rapid on-farm identification of longer cycle crops that require chemical ripening intervention. It is very important to mention here that SASIAA is at the forefront of ripener research. It might not be commonly known, but the combination ethafon and fusilade is actually a SASIAA innovation. We're actually busy at the moment looking at a new combination treatment, and this is also known to be a world first. This table shows the results of ripener trials conducted in the irrigated region and shows the combination treatment. It shows Modus being applied on its own as well as fusilade forte, and then the combination with Modus and fusilade. Please note here that the combination treatment is not the sum of the 2 single treatments. Modus is used at a lower rate, 0.8 litres per hectare in the combination treatment, compared to when it is used on its own at 1 litre per hectare. Despite the much higher ripening costs associated with the new combination treatment, indications are that this treatment is highly profitable when applied to sufficiently mature irrigated sugarcane. Another very promising feature is that the profitability advantage appears to be realized across the whole range of varieties. This is in contrast to the conventional ethafon and fusilade forte combination treatment that tends to be very variety specific. So these are very exciting results indeed. Moving on to climate trends now. It's important for me to be able to differentiate between climate change and the impacts of climate change. Climate change is what happens to the climate itself, while climate change impacts is what happens to the yields due to the change in climate. Research has been conducted on climate change, and the climate models agree that we can expect a 2-degree increase in temperature in the 2050s compared to the 1990s. We also anticipate a 5% increase in rainfall, although there's less consensus on this. We have evaluated or explored the impacts of temperature and rainfall changes, but the increasing variability of climate might be more important, and this has not yet been assessed. SASIAA has refined the cane grow model, and the model can now be used to predict yields, water use, and irrigation requirements for the period 2046 to 2065 for existing and potential new production areas in South Africa at a sub-catchment level. We anticipate that there will be increased yields in the future. For the rain-fed regions, we anticipate about a 15% increase and about a 2% increase for irrigated cane. And this is due to the faster canopy development, high photosynthesis rates in most of South Africa. However, water use and irrigation will be 11% higher. So it is believed that the currently cooler regions will benefit the most from climate change. Sucrose yields and content actually decrease for some irrigated regions. I would like to show you some maps that indicate the stalk yield and stalk yield changes that are anticipated in the future. Looking at stalk yield changes, the green on this map shows increases in yield, while the yellow show areas where we anticipate similar yields. Large increases in cane yield appear to be expected for the inland regions and in the areas where cane is not currently grown, In the areas where we do farm, we anticipate increases of less than 25% and believe these will be more realistic. It's important, however, to note that these are potential yields. We are not too sure how climate change will impact on pests and diseases. Looking at sucrose yields, the green, yellow, and the light orange areas show these areas where we anticipate increases in sucrose yield. However, the dark orange areas and areas where there is some red show potential decreases in sucrose yield for the future. It's anticipated for the irrigated production that some catchments actually showed sucrose yield decreases for the future, and this seems to be especially true for our currently warm areas. Looking at some future adaptation options that are available to us, we believe that with the increased temperatures and the increased annualized yields, we're likely to be looking at shorter cutting cycles. Wider row spacing may become possible, and we're thinking of perhaps lower costs or yield benefits with 1.8 meter single row spacing. We believe that the green can harvesting and mulch blankets might become more important, although they are very important now to be looking at, but we do believe that they would potentially mitigate the additional ET demand in the future. There is potential for further increases in yield in future with the local specific adaptations. It's possible to be applying more chemical ripening because of the shorter milling season to try and mitigate the sucrose decrease that is anticipated. Would we be able to adapt some of our varieties to these new growing conditions? And the profitability of these adaptations have not yet fully been explored. Looking at genetic adaptation of our varieties, so far we have done very limited research on this. Modeling is, however, underway to simulate some genetic effects. We are exploring what ideal traits should be under future climate scenarios. Ideally, we should be looking at ideotyping. This means we need to run the models with lots of combinations of genetic trait parameter values, using climate-changed weather data sets to determine ideal combinations of traits for future environments. Our SASIAA models may not be quite ready for this, but model evaluation and improvement work is underway at the moment. Are our varieties automatically adapted for climate change? The reason for this question is we do know that we have quite a long selection program before we are able to release a variety. So to some extent, yes, our varieties can be adapted to some extent to the future climate because we are selecting varieties under a changing climate over years. However, if you look at the number of years that we require for selection, which is about 10 years or more, depending on the region, we then take another 10 years for widespread adoption across the industry. So varieties lag climate by 15 to 20 years. To conclude, it's important to note that SASIAA is making significant progress in the development of new varieties to maximize RV yields and to improve pest and disease resistance. Income can be increased in dryland and irrigated cane when ripeners are applied correctly. The cane must be growing vigorously and crop maturity must be low. Current research indicates that climate change will have an impact on sugarcane yields in the future. Further research is required to look at the impacts of climate variability, genetic adaptation, and methods of variety selection to ensure optimal adaptation to future conditions. I'd like to end with a very special thank you to Tabele, Marvelous, Rickett, and Matthew for their assistance in putting this presentation together. I really appreciate their help. And thank you to everyone for listening today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.